In the summer of 2003, a pirate walked onto cinema screens around the world, and nothing in Hollywood was ever quite the same again. Johnny Depp, already a respected actor with 2 decades of serious film work behind him, transformed himself into Captain Jack Sparrow with such total commitment, such strange and singular energy, that audiences genuinely could not look away. The film was Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. Nobody expected it to succeed. Disney executives were reportedly nervous, and then it made over $600 million worldwide and earned Depp his first Academy Award nomination. That moment launched one of the most profitable runs any actor has ever had in the history of Hollywood. But before we talk about the fall, and it was a dramatic one, we have to understand just how high he climbed, because the height of the drop is the only way to grasp the scale of what happened. John Christopher Depp II was born in Owensboro, Kentucky on June 9, 1963. He grew up in a household that moved frequently, more than 30 times before he turned 18, and found stability not in classrooms or communities, but in music. By 15, he had dropped out of high school to pursue a career as a rock musician. He played in several bands, scraped by, and eventually found himself in Los Angeles in the early 1980s, broke, unknown, and not especially interested in acting. His first screen appearance came almost by accident. A friend introduced him to director Wes Craven, who was casting a low-budget horror film. Depp walked in, read a few lines, and was offered a role on the spot. That film was A Nightmare on Elm Street, released in 1984. His character was eaten by a bed. It was not a promising start. What followed, though, was a slow and steady accumulation of credibility. By 1987, he had landed the role of Officer Tom Hansen on the Fox television series 21 Jump Street, a show about young-looking undercover cops infiltrating high schools. He became a teen idol almost overnight. Girls screamed at his appearances, magazines put him on every cover, and Depp, characteristically, despised every second of it. He openly resisted the heartthrob label. He reportedly tried to get himself fired from the show. When his contract finally expired after 4 seasons, he walked away without hesitation and threw himself into the arms of exactly the kind of cinema that nobody was paying to see. Dark, strange, director-driven films with almost no commercial appeal. He worked with John Waters. He worked with Emir Kusturica. He chose Ed Wood over blockbusters. He played Hunter S. Thompson's unhinged alter ego in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He played a real-life FBI informant in Donnie Brasco opposite Al Pacino. None of these films made real money. Every single one of them was worth watching. And then, in 1990, he met Tim Burton, and everything changed. Their first collaboration, Edward Scissorhands, is one of those rare films that defines an actor's entire identity. Depp played a gentle, artificial man with blades for hands, communicating almost entirely through his eyes and his posture, without the protection of conventional dialogue. It required the kind of physical and emotional precision that most actors never achieve in an entire career. He was 27 years old. Over the next 2 decades, Depp and Burton would work together 8 times. Each collaboration reinforced the same essential truth. Here was an actor who operated on a different level. Not just technically, but in terms of his willingness to disappear completely into a role, to abandon vanity, to choose risk over safety every time. By the time Pirates of the Caribbean arrived in 2003, Depp had already built an almost bulletproof artistic reputation. The franchise simply made him rich to match it. For the first film, he earned $10 million. For the 4th installment, On Stranger Tides, the most expensive movie ever made at that point, he reportedly took home $55 million. For the 5th film, Dead Men Tell No Tales, Forbes estimated his earnings at $90 million. Over the life of the franchise, he earned more than $300 million from a single character. He was, without question, the biggest movie star in the world. Part 2. The Cracks Beneath the Surface. But even at the peak, the foundations were less solid than they appeared. By the mid-2000s, people close to Depp had begun to notice something was wrong. His spending had become extraordinary, not wealthy person spending, but genuinely staggering excess. He reportedly spent $30,000 per month on wine alone. He owned 14 residences, including a private island in the Bahamas and a chateau in France. He had a full-time security detail, a personal staff of 40 people, and a fleet of yachts. His financial managers later estimated that his total monthly expenditure ran to over $2 million. A man who had earned more than $650 million over his career was somehow running out of money. In 2017, Depp sued his former financial management group, the Management Group, alleging that they had mismanaged his finances and left him in serious debt. They countersued, claiming he had ignored every warning they gave him and simply refused to stop spending. The picture that emerged from court documents was of a man who had entirely lost touch with the relationship between income and expenditure, who treated his bank accounts as something that simply existed to be emptied. That lawsuit was uncomfortable, but it was manageable. It was the kind of story that could be absorbed, filed away, eventually forgotten. What could not be absorbed or forgotten was what came next. In May 2016, Amber Heard filed for divorce from Depp after just 15 months of marriage. Along with the divorce petition, she obtained a temporary restraining order, alleging that Depp had physically assaulted her during an argument. She appeared in court with visible bruising on her face. The images were everywhere within hours. Now, what is important to understand at this stage, and this matters enormously for what came later, is that the full picture of what happened inside that marriage was, at this point, almost entirely unknown to the public. All anyone could see were the photographs, and the statement from Heard, and the man whose reputation was now attached to those images. Depp denied everything. His representatives denied everything. But the photographs existed, and in Hollywood, optics move faster than facts. Within weeks, the narrative had hardened. Johnny Depp, eccentric genius, beloved pirate, unconventional icon, was now being discussed in very different terms. The conversation had shifted, and it would not shift back for a long time. There was a settlement in August 2016. Heard received $7 million. A joint statement was issued in which both parties said their relationship had been intensely passionate and at times volatile, but that there had been no intent to harm. The matter officially was closed. Officially. In December 2018, Amber Heard published an op-ed in the Washington Post. She did not name Johnny Depp directly in the piece, but she described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse, and given everything that had already been reported about their relationship, the implication was unmistakable to anyone reading it. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Disney, which had been in advanced negotiations with Depp for a sixth Pirates of the Caribbean film, moved with extraordinary speed. A deal had reportedly already been closed for $22.5 million. Within weeks of the op-ed's publication, Disney quietly stepped back. The sixth film, as far as Johnny Depp was concerned, was dead. His talent manager, Jack Wiggum, would later testify in court that after the op-ed was published, it became essentially impossible to get Depp a major studio film. He used the word catastrophic. That is not a word talent managers use casually. Warner Brothers also moved. Depp had been cast as the dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, another major studio tentpole, another enormous payday. After the third film in the series had already been announced, the studio asked Depp to resign from the role. He did so in November 2020, following the outcome of a libel case he had brought against a British tabloid. That case, against the Sun newspaper, which had called him a wife-beater, was the moment many people thought would be Depp's opportunity to clear his name in public. Instead, it went against him. The judge ruled that the newspaper's claim was substantially true, based on the evidence presented. The ruling was shattering, not just legally but reputationally. The word wife-beater, once used by a tabloid, had now been validated in a court of law. Whatever ambiguity remained in the public's mind essentially evaporated. Depp had gone from the biggest movie star in the world to someone who could not get a major studio to return his calls. His former talent agent, Tracy Jacobs, who had represented him for years, gave a deposition that painted an almost unimaginably stark picture. She described a man who had once been at the absolute pinnacle of the industry, who had earned more than $600 million, and who was now struggling to find work and pay his bills. She said plainly, "He was the biggest star in the world." The past tense was the cruelest part. And then came Virginia. In April 2022, Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for $50 million in a defamation case, arguing that the 2018 Washington Post op-ed had destroyed his career. Heard counter for $100 million. The trial was held in Fairfax County, Virginia, and unlike most legal proceedings of this nature, it was televised in its entirety. What followed was 6 weeks that the internet essentially could not look away from. Every day brought new revelations, audio recordings, text messages, testimonies about substance use, about arguments, about the interior of a marriage that had evidently been far more complicated and far more violent in multiple directions than the initial 2016 reporting had suggested. Evidence emerged that both parties had behaved in ways that were, at times, genuinely disturbing. The public, watching every moment in real time, began to reassess. It is a strange feature of this story that the trial, which Depp brought in order to restore his reputation, became the most effective weapon he ever had. Not because the evidence was straightforward, it was not, but because the sheer volume of information available allowed people to form their own conclusions. And those conclusions, for a significant majority of viewers, shifted in Depp's direction. On June 1, 2022, the jury delivered its verdict. Depp won on all 3 counts of defamation. He was awarded $10 million in compensatory damages and $350,000 in punitive damages. Heard won on 1 count of her countersuit, a technical finding related to a statement made by Depp's lawyer, and was awarded $2 million. The net result was that Depp walked away with over $8 million and, more importantly to him, a public vindication that no legal document could fully capture. When the verdict was announced, he released a statement saying the jury had given him his life back. But here is where the story becomes genuinely complicated, because a verdict in a civil defamation case does not reverse the commercial damage that had already been done. Disney did not call. Warner Brothers did not call. The $22.5 million Pirate 6 deal was not revived. Depp had proved, to the satisfaction of a Virginia jury, that the op-ed had defamed him. He had not, and could not, prove that the last 4 years had not happened. Epilogue: What remains? In May 2023, Johnny Depp walked the red carpet at the Cannes Film Festival. His French-language film, Jean du Barry, in which he plays King Louis XV, opened the festival. He received a 7-minute standing ovation. He wept. It was, in its own way, a remarkable image. One of the most famous actors alive, standing in the most prestigious venue in world cinema, receiving the kind of recognition that his peers rarely give and audiences never forget, with tears running down his face. The crowd was welcoming him back, and he looked like a man who had not been entirely sure that would ever happen. By 2026, Depp's career has continued, selectively and internationally, in ways that suggest a genuine reinvention rather than a full restoration. He works in European cinema. He plays music. He paints. His art has sold through galleries across 37 countries. The Dior Sauvage campaign, which he has fronted for years, never dropped him. Hollywood, in its traditional sense, has not come calling in the same way it once did. The franchise-level paydays are gone. The Disney relationship is, by his own statement, over permanently. He once told a court that nothing on earth would get him back to work with Disney, not even $300 million and a million alpacas. But the question that this story really raises is not whether Johnny Depp will ever headline a major Hollywood production again. The question is how any of this happened at all. How a man at the absolute summit of the entertainment industry, with the kind of earning power that most people cannot conceive of, managed to dismantle everything in the span of roughly 3 years. The honest answer is that it was not one thing. It was never one thing. It was the spending that outpaced even extraordinary income. It was the relationship that became, by any account, a war zone. It was the op-ed and the tabloid case and the studio decisions that followed each other with such speed that there was no time to recover between blows. It was the way Hollywood, when it decides to move against someone, moves with a totality that leaves almost no room for nuance or context. And it was, perhaps, the peculiar vulnerability of someone whose entire professional identity was built on transformation, on becoming other people with total conviction, who may have had, beneath all of it, very little certainty about who he actually was. The irony of Johnny Depp's story is that the trial which was meant to restore him is now the thing he is most remembered for. More than Jack Sparrow, more than Edward Scissorhands, more than 3 decades of genuinely remarkable work. Whether that changes over time is something only time can answer. What is already clear is that the fall was real and the distance was staggering. From $90 million a picture to a man in tears on a red carpet in Cannes, grateful just to be welcomed back into the room. Hollywood has very few morals, but it does have gravity. And for a few years, Johnny Depp learned exactly what that means.